Back, boxing fans, to another lunchtime boxing walk with Sean on Boxing. So obviously yesterday we had the big PBC DAZN co-promotional fight between Canelo Alvarez and Jaime Munguia. As I predicted, the Stanionis Mastre fight probably was the best fight on the card. If you didn't see it, definitely check it out. It's a very good back and forth brawl between two good fighters. Mastre obviously doesn't have much pro experience, but has a very solid amateur career, has been fast forward in his pro career, thus getting the opportunity to fight Stanionis really for what's going to become that WBA super title. For Stanionis, after being out of the ring for 2 years, it's great that he's finally back in the ring and getting an opportunity against somebody to move forward. And now with both him and Mario Barros in line to become email champions at 147 pounds, that really sets up potential opportunities for Boots Ennis to make a ton of big fights at 147 pounds. I know obviously people are trying to attach him to Bud Crawford, but let's be honest, Bud Crawford has bigger and better things to look forward to. For Boots, he still has a career ahead of him. And part of that is by beating the guys in your division that are really at your level. And that would be guys like Stanionis, Santillan, and of course, Mario Barros. He beats those guys and then he does what people want him to do. Lay claim to being one of the best pound for pound fighters in boxing by becoming an undisputed welterweight world champion. And then at that point, feel free to move up to 154 and take on all the big opponents and big name fights available to you. People are going to be pushing for it, and obviously you're going to have a lot of justification at that point. Outside of the Stanionis card, as I said, Mario Barros did win in a fight that was kind of one-sided and not that interesting. We had some other fights that were equally not as interesting. The main event turned out to be a very good fight. Jaime Munguia, for his part, came out utilizing his jab and movement in the first 3 rounds, taking all 3 of them on my card, and then obviously became a little too confident going into the 4th round, opened up a little too much to the inside, and the experienced counterpuncher, Canelo Alvarez, timed him beautifully, dropped him on his ass for the first time in his career. And that's impressive because Munguia has been in with some good fighters. Obviously, in his youth, he was a guy that just battled and threw like crazy and was open for counter punches and got hurt on multiple occasions but never got dropped until stepping in to face Canelo Alvarez. Canelo then pretty much started to find his range, started throwing with him on the inside, countering very well, obviously going to the body and just breaking him down, making Munguia work harder than he would have liked to, which ended up sapping his gas tank, making his punches a little loose and thus easier to counter. And that gave Canelo the opportunity to start taking over that fight. I do think that Munguia won at least 4, and you could easily say 5 rounds in that fight, which is impressive. Obviously, you still lose 7-5 plus a knockdown, which is what it was on my scorecard. But some people tried to play it down, act as if it was a cherry pick, acted as if Munguia was totally outclassed, which is far from the truth. If anything, he definitely legitimized himself as a top 168 pound fighter. And there's big opportunities for him within the weight class. The question is now, who can you see Jaime Munguia fighting next? A fight I think many people would prefer would be Munguia versus Berlanga, Mexico versus Puerto Rico. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about Canelo Alvarez being against Berlanga next, but you know, that's not a fight I want to see. It's not a fight that I think anybody really wants to see. It doesn't make much sense. But if you were to put Berlanga in there with Munguia, that fight is something boxing fans could get excited about. Obviously, both of them are top-level fighters, but there's questions about them, questions about their skill set, questions about their upward ability and how far they can really go in the sport. And this kind of fight would definitely start to answer some of those questions. So I do hope that's the potential next fight. Maybe you could put that on the September undercard for Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez. I still, of course, see many people acting as if Canelo Alvarez is ducking Benavidez, but once again, people are consistently inconsistent and unfair in many of their breakdowns. We saw that with Pro Box, where both, what's his face, the old trainer that claimed to fame was working with Tyson, Teddy Atlas, and Paulie continued to try to diss Canelo and downplay him. And, this is what people do consistently. And the irony is, David Benavidez was at the fight. He could have made a statement. He could have really helped promote that fight by standing up, getting in the ring, and doing something of that magnitude to sell a potential September fight. But this is the same man that heard that he was going to be mandated by the WBC and chose to move to 175 to take on Gvozdyk, a guy coming out of retirement, not a quality opponent at this point of his career. This is a guy who was at the ring. Canelo literally called him into the ring, and he refused to get in the ring. So you have to ask yourself, are these people really interested in the Canelo Alvarez fight, or are they just trying to cap and try to use Canelo to highlight themselves, build their own career by picking and choosing safe opponents and avoiding any potential roadblocks? David Benavidez's whole career has been maneuvered that way. Not until 2023, when he literally stepped up to have the best year of his career by fighting Caleb Plant, a guy that Canelo had already beaten. Canelo beat him for unification, gave him his first loss, and stopped him in the process. David Benavidez thus felt confident enough to then finally take on Caleb Plant. This was a guy he could have fought years earlier for unification, both under the PBC banner, yet walked away from that fight. His promoter or manager continuously making it about money, right? And then now he's got an opportunity to sell this fight between Canelo Alvarez, and we don't hear him saying anything about it. Also, he could potentially be pushing himself as the Dmitry Bivol opponent to replace Beterbiev. He's in shape, the fight's scheduled. Tell me that wouldn't be a far better fight than Benavidez-Gvozdyk. You have Benavidez versus Bivol for the 175-pound title. That shit would be huge. A huge pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia, tens of millions of dollars on the table, yet he hasn't even called for that fight. He is happy to fight a no-hoper like Gvozdyk and then continue to clout chase off of Canelo Alvarez and act like, oh, I've always wanted to fight. Yeah, you always wanted to fight, and now the WBC said they're going to mandate you, and the first thing you did is move up to 175. You said you're going to fight David Morrell. And then what happened? You ducked that fight completely, just like you ducked the Caleb Plant fight. And I'm not hating on David Benavidez. It's just ironic that guys like him can do whatever they want, aren't held in no scrutiny at all by boxing fans. Yet Canelo Alvarez, who is the most accomplished boxer in professional boxing today, has the best resume out of any active boxer in the game right now, yet he's held to this scrutiny. And people say, well, when you're at his level, of course you're going to be held to higher scrutiny. Well, if that's the case, how come nobody holds Tank Davis to that level of scrutiny? He is the face of boxing, according to many. But yet people allow him to fight whoever he wants, consistently drag people up in weight, take on fighters that nobody had asked for or wanted to see on pay-per-view, when he has not just one potential opponent that boxing fans would love to see him in against, but multiple opponents boxing fans would love to see him in with. So if you can't make one of the fights, you should have no problem at least making one of them if there's 4 potential opponents available to you. With Canelo Alvarez, the reality is it doesn't matter who he fights. People are going to hate on him, find excuses to criticize him, and just continue to do that. If he fights David Benavidez next, people are going to find some excuse to downplay that fight and somehow give him no credit for taking on Benavidez. And if he beats Benavidez, then of course they're going to say, well, Benavidez drained himself to come from 175 down to 168. Oh, Canelo waited him out. It's like, there's going to be some excuse. You know it's true. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You know, that's just the way boxing fans are. Jaded, angry, not happy with fucking anything, always looking for some controversial bullshit to end up pushing, as opposed to just being fans of boxing. The Canelo Alvarez Munguia fight delivered. The card, a little disappointing. Now we'll see what Canelo Alvarez does next in September. He opened the door for a David Benavidez fight. Let's see if Benavidez is really made like that. And heaven forbid Berlanga is the opponent, because that would be the perfect kind of ammunition Canelo could give the haters to sign to fight Berlanga. People will just jump on it and they will crucify him for taking on that level of opponent. And that's why I would much rather prefer Munguia versus Berlanga on the undercard. Have Canelo fight David Benavidez. Win, lose, or draw, it's a huge fight, and obviously a significant fight for Canelo Alvarez. If he is to lose to David Benavidez, I don't think he deserves to be criticized and shit on for it, because really he's fighting everybody. He's literally doing what Oscar De La Hoya did, taking on everyone. And when you do that, inevitably you're going to take some losses. But as a boxing fan, what would you rather have? People cherry picking opponents, never putting an opponent in there that potentially could beat them, or taking on the potential opponents that will give you losses? We know Canelo steps in and fights those opponents because he fought Bivol. He lost to Bivol. He fought Floyd. He lost to Floyd. He fought Lara when he didn't need to fight Lara. He fought Golovkin, you know, and luckily for him was given the decision in both cases. But the truth is, you know, I don't think it matters what Canelo does. He's going to be scrutinized and criticized far more savagely than any other boxer in the sport today, which is definitely unfair. But it is what it is. You can't change people's opinion. You can't change people's perspective. But this is my opinion. This is my perspective. Also, this week, Inoue fighting in front of 55,000 people in the Tokyo Dome. The biggest fight to happen in Japan since Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas. But yet, he needs to come to America. I mean, again, here's just another scenario of people trying to discredit and downplay an opponent or a fighter by not giving him credit and trying to find ways to take credit away from him. Unlike many top-level fighters right now, pound-for-pound quality guys, Inoue's already fought 4 times outside of Japan. Once in the UK, 3 times in the United States, and would have fought 4 times in the States, but COVID obviously stopped that Casemiro fight from happening. And since then, he's went on to become a huge superstar in Japan. So much so that he's getting paid tens of millions of dollars, fighting in front of 55,000 people, and selling huge amounts of pay-per-view in Japan. So why would he come to America to fight a mediocre American opponent that people don't even recognize or give attention to, and will continue to not give Inoue credit if he goes there and beats them, as he's done on 3 other occasions? People act as if he goes to America, all of a sudden he's not going to get knockouts. Yet all 3 times he fought in America, he scored 3 knockouts. Who's to expect that it's going to be any different? People talk about his gloves, the wrapping, PEDs. Once again, people hating on a particular fighter because he doesn't fit a particular specification that they want their fighters to be. And we know what that is. It is what it is. Inoue is fighting Louis Nery, a 2-time champion in Japan. It should be a great fight. Obviously, Louis Nery is coming off of a fantastic performance against Arvet Hovharessian in his last fight, stopping him late, which put him in position to get this Inoue fight right now. It's also being talked about that potentially Inoue might go to Australia to fight Sam Goodman, an Australian, a mandatory opponent. which would be a huge fight. And once again, Inoue fighting outside of Japan for the 5th time of his career. There's also talk about him going to Saudi Arabia on a huge deal with Turkey Al-Sheikh, which people estimated could be worth $60 million. I don't know the truth or the specifics about it, but for money like that, why would you say no? And literally, like Canelo Alvarez is asking to get paid versus David Benavidez, Inoue would obviously get paid to go fight in Saudi Arabia. So if you want people to travel, you want people to make fights abroad, you got to treat them the way you should. And obviously that's the speculation with regards to Inoue. I would love to see that. Him versus MJ Akhmedov in Saudi Arabia would be huge, would be incredible. It would just be another step in his career. And then hopefully by 2025, we might be able to see him fight his countryman, Junto Nakatani, in what for me and hardcore boxing fans would be an incredible matchup. If it doesn't happen, then potentially we will see Inoue move up to 126 pounds to try to become a 5-weight world champion, the first Japanese boxer in history to accomplish that feat. Obviously, Ioka and Inoue are both presently 4-weight world champions, both from Japan. But for Inoue to do that and become a 5-weight world champion, joining a small elite group of boxers who've done that, less than 10 through history, that would be quite the accomplishment and quite the legacy to add to his already illustrious career. Obviously, it's going to be a great card. There's going to be 4 world title fights on this Inoue card. Jason Maloney will be defending his title. Inoue's brother will be defending his title. The fighter from 112 pounds, sorry, I can't really pronounce his name. I think it's like Akure. He's going to be defending his 112-pound world champion. And then, of course, there's Inoue defending his undisputed titles versus Nery. Let me know what you think about this card and all the other information we discussed today. Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching. I'm going to go buy myself some lunch right now, get back to work, and get out of the heat. Peace out, everyone. Enjoy.